Hey everyone, Chef Lisa here. Today I am making a super delicious roasted tomato sauce, and it's great to throw in your freezer to use for a multitude of applications. It's dead easy to make and it tastes so much better than the stuff you can buy at the grocery store. So obviously I'm a huge fan of this recipe. So let's jump in and get going on this recipe. Quick note on the type of tomatoes we're using. So I recommend using the highest quality tomatoes that you can find. So garden tomatoes are your best bet. If you don't have your own garden tomatoes, steal some from a friend who does, or maybe buy some tomatoes from the farmer's market. But really, I mean, they're the main character, so you really do want good quality tomatoes. I'm using tomatoes from my garden today. I'm using a mixture of tomatoes. I'm using some plum tomatoes and some Roma tomatoes and some kind of like mini Roma tomatoes. I think they're called Juliet tomatoes. These are all great sauce tomatoes because they're low moisture content, so it gives you a really nice consistency for sauces. These beautiful kind of heirloom style big garden tomatoes, you want to skip these for sauces. They have a lot more water in them, so they're just going to water down your sauces. You're not going to get that really rich, concentrated tomato flavor from these guys. So save these for your sandwiches and fresh applications. Although if you sneak one or two in to the sauce, that's okay too. Okay, we're just gonna start by cutting these guys in half. Now you can trim off the end if you want to. I don't even usually do that unless there's some, really gnarly ends there. Obviously you wanna take off these, pieces of the plant if there's any on there. But you just wanna cut them all in half lengthwise. We're gonna add them to a big bowl here. So, and I have about 3 pounds of tomatoes here, roughly. So this is really the hardest part of the recipe. Okay, so once you have all of your tomatoes in a bowl here, I'm not even going to really measure. I'm going to add a healthy glug of extra virgin olive oil. Again, if you can get some high quality stuff here, that's best. Good quality ingredients, you're going to end up with a good quality final product. So probably around somewhere between 2 to 4 tablespoons would be my guess. A good pinch of kosher salt here as well. You want to make sure everything is seasoned really nicely. We're going to also season it at the end as well when we're tasting it, but I always like to add seasoning throughout my cooking process. Some cracks of black pepper. Okay, and I have a hot chili pepper here from my garden, a Thai chili pepper. If you've been watching any of my videos, you'll know that I just really like everything to be spicy. So I'm gonna add that in there as well. This is obviously optional. I'm just gonna give it kind of a rough chop. Seeds and all, these are pretty potent, so use it to your whatever level of spice you like. You can also just do some chili flakes if you want a little bit of heat as well. That's totally fine. Okay, a little bit more olive oil actually. And now we're just gonna give this a good toss to make sure everything is coated in all the oil and the salt and pepper. This is why I like to use a big bowl. Okay, that looks good. Now we're just gonna divide this between 2 baking sheets. I told you this was easy. This is like 90% done at this point. Okay, so I have 2 baking sheets here, rimmed baking sheets, lined with some aluminum foil. I did give it a little spray with some nonstick cooking spray. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. And then we're just gonna evenly divide it between the sheets. Actually, this might fit on 1 sheet. Maybe we'll do that. Okay, if you're doing a double recipe, you can do it on 2 sheets. We'll see how this goes. See how much room we have. So you want to just spread that out into an even layer, equal layer here. I like to do generally pretty much cut side up here, not super fussy about it. Oh, this is going to be like 1.5 sheets worth of tomatoes. Okay, so that is done. Last step here Let me clear some of this out of the way. We're gonna add some aromatics here now. So we have our onions and some garlic. Now this is gonna be roasting in the oven for probably about an hour or so. So you wanna cut your onion into big pieces because you don't want it to burn or get crispy in the oven during that time. So I like to just cut, well, I guess I'll cut the end off first, and then I like to cut into kind of thick rounds, like 1/2 inch or so. You can also just cut it into thick, like kind of big wedges if you want to. And take the skin off. Now you don't want to separate these into their rings or anything like that, just leave them whole. And we're just going to nestle those in to the tomatoes, just kind of in the middle of everything. Just get them in wherever you can get them. Still haven't decided if I'm going to use both of my baking sheets or not. You don't want it to be overcrowded. You do want them to have room to do their thing, to roast nicely, but yeah, you don't want it to be, you just want it to be nicely spaced out. Okay, I'm gonna do 2 onions here. Okay, I might end up using both baking sheets. We're just trying things out on camera today. Okay, a couple more rounds of these onions. Okay, so same thing there. And then garlic. We're gonna treat this like we do roasted garlic. So we're just gonna cut off the ends to expose the cloves, like so. And then we're going to nestle that in as well. So get them in cut side down, just wherever within the baking sheet. We're gonna do, depending on the size of your heads of garlic, I'm gonna do either 2 to 3. This one's smaller, so I'm gonna do 3, because I just love the flavor of it anyways. Okay, so I'm gonna finish nestling all these veggies together, probably divide it back between the 2 baking sheets. You do whatever works for you, however it's gonna fit best. We're gonna put this in the oven now at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and we wanna roast that for about an hour or so. So check it around the 45-minute mark. You're looking for, you know, some of the tomatoes to be nicely softened. You don't want them to be swimming in a bunch of liquid, but you don't want it to be crispy and dried out either. What you're looking for is a little bit of caramelization, maybe a little bit of charring around the edges of some of those tomatoes. That gives it a really nice caramelization, a little bit of smoky flavor that I really love. If you're not into that, you can pull them out a little bit earlier than that, but I really love that. So keep an eye on it. It'll take somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour. So we'll see you back in about an hour or so. Okay, the tomatoes are done cooking, so now we can move on to the next step of our recipe, which is pureeing. Now, I recommend that you let all of these tomatoes cool for at least 10 to 15 minutes or so after taking them out of the oven, just to make your life easier. We don't want to be handling all these hot tomatoes piping hot out of the oven when we're trying to puree. Plus, we're going to be squeezing all of this lovely roasted garlic out. And that's really hard to do when it's piping hot. So give it a few minutes to cool off and then it should be ready to go. So I made a pretty small batch this time, so I'm pretty confident that it's all gonna fit no problem into the food processor today. If you've made a double, triple batch of this, as I sometimes do, just make sure to puree in batches and that's no problem at all. So I'm gonna use a spatula and get all of this goodness into the food processor. Onions and all, you want everything in there for all that flavor. Just scrape that all up. Also done this in a blender before, so either one works just fine. If you are using a blender, I recommend using a pretty high-powered blender like a Vitamix or something similar to that, because I've left the skins on the tomatoes in this recipe for ease of the recipe, just making things easier. I left all the skins on. That doesn't bother me at all. If you don't like the skins on your tomatoes, you can just peel them off when it comes out of the oven. They should be easy to peel off once you've let them cool a little bit. or in your blender, just blend it all up with the skins on, and then you can strain it through a fine mesh strainer afterwards if you would like. So you have some options there. I don't mind the skins in there. I find that I like the extra fiber, so I'm gonna keep them in. Okay, and then we're just gonna take this lovely garlic and just squeeze all of that out. Like, oh my gosh, so good. Get all that flavor in there too. Roasted garlic adds such a nice flavor to this recipe. It just gets so sweet. It really complements the flavor of the tomatoes. Okay, get all that in there. And then on my pan there, there's some kind of cooked on stuff on the pan. Now, if you've made this and it's like totally blackened on there, kind of burnt, you can just leave it. But I would say the stuff I have on here is kind of borderline. So really that's just some good flavor. So I want to save that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosen some of that up with some hot water from my kettle here to add that back into the sauce. So just a little splash. I'm going to do that on both. Don't need much. And just kind of scrape some of that up. You want to get as much flavor out of this tomato, out of these tomatoes as you can. And all this stuff on the pan is like gold, such good flavor. So hopefully I don't dump it all over the place here, but I'm going to try and get this in as well. Oh yeah, all that flavor. You want all that in there. This step is optional. Don't have to do this, but I like to squeeze all that flavor out of those lovely garden tomatoes. Okay, now all that's left to do is blend it all up. So have everything in there. And we're gonna puree it. So every blender and every food processor is a little bit different. I let that go for about 30 to 45 seconds or so until it's nicely pureed, and oh, how beautiful does that look. It looks so good. So that's literally it. That's the sauce. I'm gonna transfer this to a bowl so we can see it a little better. So 3 pounds of tomatoes, and that makes a pretty decent amount of sauce, actually. Look how beautiful that looks. So remember to also adjust any seasonings, give it a taste, add some salt and pepper as needed. And then you can freeze this in, I like to freeze it in 1 to 2 cup portions, so you can just pull it out as needed for whatever recipes you're preparing. But super easy, super delicious, so much better than grocery store stuff. And it's just so versatile. You can use it in so many different applications. So I hope you give this recipe a try at home and please enjoy. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.